Hello, everyone. I'm seeing some names come in. Welcome, welcome. We'll give you a few seconds to join in. Wonderful that you're with us today. Many thanks to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I see more coming in. Give it a 30 seconds or so. Fabulous. More participants trickling in. Hello. Hello, everyone. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us today. From all over the country, it is so lovely to have you. Many thanks for joining us today. We'll go get started. Welcome to the Canadian Women's Foundation's annual Digital Town Hall. Thank you for joining us from your community. My name is Andrea Gunraj. I'm VP of Public Engagement here, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Arian Wilson. She's the Digital Communications Coordinator. I want to welcome our friends, Francophone and Anglophone alike. Portions of this event will be in French and portions will be in English. We have translation for you. I want to ask you to please use the translate button down at the bottom of your screen if you need it. You'll see English and you'll see the capacity to click on French depending on what you need. Now, there's two things you have to think about. We are going to be streaming in English or in French for closed captioning, and you'll see the links in the chat. My colleague will share that with you. Get ready for those links. You can use them if you need them, either in English or in French, and it will open up in another window. But if you need to view English subtitles directly in this meeting, you can see the show closed caption button, again, down at the bottom of your screen beside the English and French translation area. So please get yourself familiar with those things if you don't already know them. And I want to just give you a heads up. We will be playing some videos that have parts in English and some parts in French. We want to represent all the different languages that we know people are joining us with today. So get ready for those closed captioning links for when we play the videos. You will not hear interpretation over those videos. You will have to get the closed captioning links. We'll remind you every time before we get into a video. So as we begin here, the work of the Canadian Women's Foundation and that of the programs we support today take place on traditional First Nations, Métis, and Inuit territories. We are so grateful for the opportunity to meet and work on this land, but we recognize that land acknowledgements are not enough. We need to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all our relations. Now learn about the land you're on today by visiting this link, nativeland.ca. It's available in English and in French. Get a chance to see the land that you're on, and let's respect that we are on land that is shared and that we have work to do when it comes to that reconciliation, decolonization, truth, allyship. And a note, my colleagues and I have set up this webinar today to be a safe and welcoming space as much as possible. Now I know the digital world, social media and messaging and meeting apps, the things we use every day can be unsafe spaces for women, girls, and two-spirit, trans, and non-binary people, especially those who are racialized, who speak about gender justice and feminism, or who may be a part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ communities. They get especially targeted. It's wrong, and it needs to change today. We're going to be talking about digital safety and gendered online abuse later on, but I do want to acknowledge right now the bravery it takes to be online as a woman or gender diverse person today who cares about gender justice. I want to thank you for persisting and being here with us today.
Bonjour tout le monde, c'est un plaisir d'être ici avec vous. Merci d'être venu. Maintenant, pour une courte introduction. La Fondation canadienne des femmes, c'est quoi? Nous sommes la fondation publique du Canada en faveur de l'égalité et de la justice entre les genres. À cette fin, nous soutenons l'action féministe communautaire en établissant avec des communautés et des organisations des partenariats. Ensemble, nous travaillons pour améliorer les conditions en favorisant la diversité dans les postes de haute direction, ainsi que les connaissances diverses pour susciter des changements durables. La Fondation canadienne des femmes, pourquoi est-elle si importante? Parce que nous avons toutes et tous besoin d'un Canada égalitaire entre les genres, maintenant plus que jamais. Lorsque nous arrivons à la justice entre les genres, tout le monde réussit. Donc pourquoi sommes-nous rassemblés ici aujourd'hui? Nous voulons vous faire part de ce que votre action et votre soutien à la Fondation ont permis de réaliser et de ce qu'il reste à faire ensuite.
Many thanks. Now, I'm just going to ask us to stop sharing screen so we can see you. We've got 3 prize draws today, and we're really excited. We'll share more about that later on in the event. I want to encourage you to stick around. We want people to get a chance to win. Please note that we're also recording this event so we can share it later with you and with other people who maybe couldn't make it today. We can't see you on the recording. I just wanted to give you assurance there. We're also hosting a question and answer period a bit later on. Thank you so much for sending your questions in advance. We got some great questions. Also, do please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box down below, again, in the bottom of your screen. I bet we won't get to every question today, but we'll do what we can. And we'll, of course, follow up afterwards if there are really important, really juicy unanswered questions. And a note that we will not be checking the raised hands function. Also, a note about the content we'll be speaking to today. We will address gender-based violence at various points in this event. I encourage you to take care of yourself along the way. You can step away from the screen if you need to. You can mute or turn off the sound if you need to, and you can come back when you're ready. If you would like to find services that might help you in your region, I want to encourage you to visit the support services page on our website. You'll see that on the screen. You'll see the link in the chat as well too. It's available in English and in French. Now, thank you in advance. If we run long, we can talk. So if we run long, please, we appreciate your patience and I thank you in advance. Let's move on to the next segment. I want to give you an overview of the impact that you've had for gender justice by supporting the Canadian Women's Foundation in numbers and in some stories. Please watch this.
Every woman, girl, and gender diverse person has the power, safety, support, and rights to thrive today and tomorrow. This is a bold new vision we can achieve together, even in today's context of change and challenge, promise and opportunity.
As donors, partners, and allies, your generous support of the Canadian Women's Foundation enables us all to rally together as a steadfast champion for gender justice and equality. We want to thank you for your commitment, and we want to give you a sense of the impact that you make in every province and territory. You touch the lives of so many people. Listen to this story.
When people come in or learn about the center, the reaction is, "This is what we have always needed," says Kirsten Bell, director at Revelstoke Community Connections Society in British Columbia. Our generous partners and donors, people like you, have enabled Revelstoke to open a new drop-in women's center this year. The center is in a remote area of British Columbia, and it helps women and gender diverse people facing abuse. People can drop in to talk to staff members about abuse issues they're dealing with in a safe space with kitchen, laundry, and computer facilities. They can also access a closet stocked with clothing and other supplies. Thank you for being there for women, girls, and two-spirit trans and non-binary people in the tough journey to find safety and rebuild their lives.
De 2022 à 2023, la générosité de nos partenaires et de nos donateurs a permis à la Fondation canadienne des femmes de soutenir plus de 600 organisations subventionnées qui offrent des services et agissent en faveur de l'égalité et de la justice des genres dans des communautés à travers le Canada. Vous avez créé des opportunités de collaboration et d'apprentissage pour ces bénéficiaires de subventions pour aider à renforcer leur collectif. Et vous avez su susciter un changement durable grâce aux efforts visant à modifier les politiques pour combler les écarts entre les genres, là où nous vivons, travaillons et nous divertissons. Vous apportez aussi un changement à tous les niveaux, individuel, familial, communautaire et dans l'ensemble de la société. Vous aidez à répondre aux besoins immédiats des filles, des femmes et des personnes de genre divers. Vous contribuez à surmonter les obstacles liés au genre et vous renforcez le mouvement féministe pour la justice de genre. Voici un autre exemple de vie que vous avez touché.
When I graduated from university, I was so excited about the future and the prospect of unlimited possibilities. Equipped with degrees in economics and finance, I applied for jobs that matched my skills and personality, but I never got a call back. My education was not landing me the job I wanted, so I decided to make a career transition. I started by taking online coding courses, but without a technical background, I struggled to understand the concepts. It was a great relief when I found the Women in Technology training program at Making Changes. I signed up for the program and it helped me bridge the knowledge gap. It was intensive, challenging, and rewarding. I graduated from the program with more self-confidence, a great foundation in coding, and the skills that I needed to thrive in the workplace. I even landed my dream job, the kind of job I had applied for before the Women in Technology program. But this time I got a call back. I work as an analyst in financial technology. And I love this job because it's a great fit for my interests, abilities, and personality. I feel fulfilled doing what I do because it motivates me to never give up as I continue to grow in my new career. I am glad I believed in myself. I am optimistic about the future, and I hope that people who hear my story will be inspired to follow their dreams and believe in themselves too.
511 of our grantee programs serve First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. 141 programs serve rural, remote, and northern communities in Canada. These communities tend to be more isolated. Internet access and transit options are limited. You might have to travel miles to get basic services. Our grantee partners in these areas do so much to meet the needs of women, girls, gender diverse people, and their families. They go above and beyond. We're particularly honored to continue to partner with Makeway Foundation on the Northern Strategy, guided by a Northern Women and Girls Advisory Committee with representatives from Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Nunavik, and Nunavut. Our grantee partners include Baker Lake Prenatal Nutrition Project, which improves nutrition of expectant mothers and babies through education and hands-on cooking classes using both traditional foods and store-bought ingredients. And did you know that 557 of our grantee partners serve girls and young people under 30? Listen to this story about your impact.
As girls approach adolescence, they face higher levels of sexual assault and other gendered violence, a decline in mental health, and negative stereotyping. And it's most effective to teach people about healthy relationships to self and others from a young age. That's why your support of grantee partner Mama Wichita in Manitoba is so important. They lead the Positive Adolescent Sexuality Support Program, also known as the PASS program. It helps Indigenous youth learn about healthy relationships and sexuality in a safe environment. They cover issues like dating violence, sexual health, and self-esteem. One young person in the program says, "We smudge, we support one another, and we have good food while we learn about important youth issues." Mama Wichita translates from Ojibwe to the phrase, "We all work together to help one another." The PASS program does exactly this for young people, and so do you when you support the Canadian Women's Foundation.
À travers les subventions du programme de préparation à l'investissement de la Fondation canadienne des femmes, les organisations caritatives, les organismes à but non lucratif, les entreprises à vocation sociale et les coopératives dirigées par des femmes et des personnes bispirituelles, trans et non-binaires reçoivent du soutien. Ces organisations reçoivent des investissements et des ressources pour accomplir leurs objectifs sociaux, culturels et environnementaux, et elles génèrent des revenus pour réinvestir dans leur mission. Depuis 2019, nos partenaires et donateurs ont permis d'investir dans 90 organismes à vocation sociale à travers le Canada. Une de ces organisations est The Abundance Store, gérée par la société Elizabeth Fry et Elevate Her en Nouvelle-Écosse. The Abundance Store emploie des femmes et des personnes aux genres divers qui ont été criminalisées. Cette opportunité leur donne la chance de gagner de nouvelles compétences professionnelles. Et elles vendent des articles qu'elles créent dans le magasin. Une employée du Abundance Store nous a dit « C'est agréable d'être soutenue par des femmes courageuses, fortes, qui donnent du pouvoir. C'est magnifique parce que je n'ai jamais eu le soutien nécessaire auparavant et je veux juste que les gens sachent que la guérison est possible. »
You enable the Canadian Women's Foundation's strong and leading national voice on concerns that women, girls, and gender diverse people face every day. You also help create professional development, training, and best practice development opportunities for gender justice leaders and service providers. Leadership voices matter in the media as much as anywhere else. You enabled the annual Landsberg Award for Feminist Journalism, co-presented with the Canadian Journalism Foundation in honor of the iconic journalist, Michelle Landsberg. This year's award went to Molly Hayes, Elizabeth Branzetti, and Tavia Grant for their Globe and Mail series on intimate partner abuse and coercive control.
Leadership comes in many forms. It can come in the form of reclaiming and telling our stories. Your support of our grantee partner, Stardale Women's Group in Alberta, goes toward a very special project. Your support is enabling a filmmaker to work alongside Stardale Women's Group and young women in the community to help create a documentary entitled Warrior Women, The Beat of the Drum. Residential schools and colonization have stripped generations of our children and youth of our language, culture, and spirituality. And as Indigenous peoples, Warrior Women, the beat of the drum is all about reclaiming and understanding the power of the drum, its traditional role in our communities, in our ceremonies, and in the healing it brings to the lives of our young women.
When I was younger, I hated myself. I thought that I was broken, that no one could ever or would ever love me. It's the only way a child can grow up when their father abandons them. There is a sad and lonely girl. She has scars all over her body that she won't even show her mother. She's sweet on the outside, but she hurts on the inside. She's been abused since she was a child. I've learned to be on guard, wary of people on their phones around me on buses and trains, to be scared of men and lingering looks. I've learned that there's a special breed of racism that allows girls like me to be stolen away, like Pocahontas. It was my first day at school, grade 8. I went to the washroom and I got beat up. It was 2 girls from grade 9. They cornered me and started pushing, punching, and kicking me in places no one else could see. My stomach, my legs, and my hips. Racism is so prominent that people are murdered and assaulted every day, and nothing changes. Girls like me go missing all the time.
When asking for answers, with the silence of 1,000 heartbeats. Can you hear them crying? Can you hear them screaming? They are the voices of forgotten ones, left in darkness and fear.
Little bones in the silence of a beaded history. History of abuse and power.
This is our final chance.
Maybe the final hour. Dead flowers of the forgotten ones on the highway of tears.
Stand with your sisters.
What happened to our sisters?
Stand with your mothers.
What happened to our mothers?
Stand with your daughters.
What happened to our daughters?
Stand up for the missing and murdered.
We are a beautiful race. We have endured all attempts to extinguish our flame.
Asians are not a virus. Hispanics are not illegals. Black people are not threats.
Muslims are not terrorists. Native people are not savages.
There's a difference between giving up and knowing when you've had enough.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, what I like about that is that it's short enough to envision, but long enough to actually change everything. With fresh, new strategic priorities to guide us, the Canadian Women's Foundation is coming into its own as an innovative, visionary, strategic organization that you empower with your donations, your attention, and your reinforcement. And we cannot thank you enough for all you do.
With you, we will be a champion. We will advocate and create lasting change. We will be bold and demonstrate our impact. We will be steadfast, diversifying and investing in the future. Again, our deepest thanks to each of you, to our partners and donors, our grantees, our board and staff teams, and our volunteers and followers. Read all about your impact at canadianwomen.org and keep watching. Together, we will achieve gender equality and justice.
On a travaillé sans relâche. On s'est battu pour la cause. Et ensemble, on a réécrit l'histoire plus d'une fois. On a fait bouger les choses à coups de persévérance, sans jamais s'asseoir sur nos lauriers, en se disant plutôt, on le veut et on le vaut. Parce qu'on sait que lorsqu'un moi devient des milliers, des millions de nous, c'est fou. C'est ce qui nous pousse à nous tenir debout, à ne pas s'arrêter tant que le Canada tout entier ne sera pas avec nous. Nous sommes les persévérantes. Et ensemble, nous atteindrons l'égalité des genres.
Thank you so much for watching that. I hope you got everything, but don't worry if you didn't. We'll be sending you that link to this recording and you'll see all that stuff again to be able to pay attention to it a little bit more. Now, Suzanne Duncan, VP of Philanthropy, is with us now. She and her team speaks with donors and supporters, people like you, every single day. I've got a question for you, Suzanne. We've got donors with us who enable the impact we just heard about, and that was a powerful video. I really want to know, what are they telling us now about what they're concerned about making an impact on right now?
Thank you, Andrea. It's great to be here today, and it's wonderful to share a little bit about the important work that donors make happen through the Canadian Women's Foundation. Like you said, I have the great honor of speaking with many, many, many donors and supporters every day and hearing about what's on their mind. Because the issues we focus on here at the foundation touch so many parts of people's lives, I get to hear about a lot of concerns. Folks are worried about affordable housing, about spikes in gender-based violence, about trying to balance caregiving with work, and about the disproportionate impact of the climate crisis on women and gender diverse people. They might be worried about affordability and having that economic security. And they're worried about all the ways that women and gender diverse people, especially racialized and Indigenous people and people with disabilities, are still being left out of important conversations and spaces. I've also heard people worry about the overall mental health of young people, especially girls and young women and gender diverse people. So Andrea, there's a lot of worries out there. And those worries are really interconnected. And I think that's why supporters turn to the Canadian Women's Foundation. We make sure that critical resources get into grassroots community organizations, these organizations that are on the ground creating solutions across Canada. But we also take what we learn from these grassroots organizations to push for systems change at the highest levels so that we can get to the root causes of what's holding gender justice back. Now, this approach is fundamental to creating the kind of tangible, lasting change that we've been hearing about through this conversation.
So our Rosemary Brown Giving Collective, it's a very special group of people who support the Canadian Women's Foundation. Please explain what they are and what they focus on.
Sure. There are so many ways that donors support our work. And I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that are on this event today for your generosity, for your commitment, and how you are helping drive forward gender equity and gender justice. But I do want to talk about one particular group of donors that's really helping us get funds into communities and push for that collective change we all need. Today, we have close to 500 generous people who are part of our Rosemary Brown Giving Collective. And as a group, they contribute nearly $250,000 every year. This group is made up of monthly donors who make gifts of $10, $20, even $100 a month to support the highest priority needs of the Canadian Women's Foundation. Members of the Rosemary Brown Giving Collective receive updates on their impact. They get invitations to events and opportunities to come together and raise their voices and insights. If you're a member of the Rosemary Brown Giving Collective, I want to say a huge thank you. If you're interested in learning more about how you can join this collective, please visit our website or you can click this link to find out more. And I just want to say the spirit of the Rosemary Brown Collective honors one of the Canadian Women's Foundation founding mothers, the Honorable Honorable Rosemary Brown, who is the first Black woman elected as a member of provincial legislature in Canada. And Rosemary Brown provided us with a quote that we live by at the Canadian Women's Foundation. In fact, Andrea, I can see it right behind your shoulder. That quote is, "Until all of us have made it, none of us have made it." And that's the commitment that motivates us here and that motivates the Rosemary Brown Giving Collective. Every single one of us and every single member of the collective is committed to ensuring that women, girls, and gender diverse people in Canada have power, safety, support, and rights.
Thank you for that overview, Suzanne. I'm going to invite Ariane back on the screen with me, along with our other colleagues at the Canadian Women's Foundation. And it's time for some of your questions to get answered. I want you to please go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A box if you haven't done so. That's right at the bottom of your screen. And I'm going to get started with some of the questions that we've already gotten, and we got a lot, so patience with us. We're going to do the best that we can and try to answer them to the best of our abilities. We'll keep it short and tight. So Paulette Senior is with us, President and CEO of the Canadian Women's Foundation. We have Anurada Dugal, VP of Community Initiatives, and Olga Savistan, VP of Finance and Operations with us. All right, keep it brief, folks. We'll do our best. Paulette, my first question is for you. So in that video that we saw, you spoke to our new strategic plan at the foundation. We have received a few questions about the importance of collaboration in pushing for transformative change. I want you to share what that collaboration will look like going forward as we try to achieve some very ambitious goals for gender justice.
Thank you so much. It's great to have everyone here with us today. Another year of sharing our impacts with you folks across the country. Yeah, so collaboration, I think, is really an important way of work for the foundation. It is how we work with, as Susan was saying, our donor partners, our grantee partners, our government partners, and all the folks that we work with to deliver on various aspects of our strategic plan. And you're right, we have a sparkling brand new strategic plan that's going to guide our work for the next 5 years. And I don't think there's any way we can accomplish that without really solid strategic collaboration. And so for us, collaboration really involves a way of work for us that includes, you know, those who have the knowledge and principles that are important in this work. This is work that requires key expertise on the issues that we address, whether that be in terms of women's economic development. We heard the story later earlier of a woman who really was successful in her quest to advance in her career. Gender-based violence. We've heard stories, many stories, countless stories about that as well. The importance of building girls' leadership and their self-esteem and their confidence. All of that is important. And so we can't do that without collaborating with the folks on the ground who do the work, who have the knowledge, who know their communities, who are expert in the issues that they're working with, and who have the ability to connect with those folks on the ground and be a safe place and haven for folks to be. For the donors who really want to be able to change a trajectory on these issues. And so sitting down and working with them and carving out what that kind of proposal will look like and how we will work together, and us being able to say, this is what we're able to do, that we're definitely not magicians, but who we are, people who care and live by that quote behind you, Andrea, that we know that it's about all of us, not just one of us. Yeah. I would also say that trust is an important thing. We trust our partners. We trust our grantee partners. We know that when people come to us to work with us on the mission and vision of gender justice and equality, that they stand with us. And so we work from a place of trusting each other to deliver, and that they know that when they are contributing their resources, their dollars, their knowledge, their expertise, that they're trusting us to deliver on that, and that that's a fundamental, I would say, pillar of collaboration. So maybe I will share that. I'm sure there's more I can say, but as you said, it's going to be short, so I'm trying to keep it short.
Thank you so much for that, Paulette. Maintenant, j'ai une question pour Anuradha. Donc, nous recevons souvent de très, très bonnes questions au sujet des demandes de subvention. Puis, comment exactement faire une demande de subvention? Pouvez-vous nous donner un aperçu du processus pour faire une demande?
Absolument, oui. Bonjour tout le monde, bonjour et merci pour la question, Ariane. Mais on essaie de faire que ce processus de demande de subvention est le plus transparent et la plus facile possible. Alors, nous commençons avec un appel de demande qui est émis par courriel et qui est aussi disponible sur notre site web. Vous pouvez vous abonner d'ailleurs pour recevoir les annonces très facilement sur notre site web. Nous utilisons en effet un portail électronique pour recevoir les demandes par Internet. Si jamais ce n'est pas disponible pour les groupes, nous pouvons les recevoir d'une autre manière, mais il faut toujours prendre l'opportunité de parler avec nos employés. Chaque groupe qui veut faire une demande a accès à notre équipe pour recevoir des conseils, pour comprendre comment préparer une demande de subvention. Nous offrons aussi des webinaires et des sessions de questions-réponses pour les groupes intéressés. Et nous essayons vraiment de faire que le processus de faire l'application n'est pas une barrière pour les groupes qui ont peut-être moins de ressources. Après ça, nous voulons aussi donner les groupes la chance de répondre à ces questions, à peu près 20 questions, un budget, des lettres d'appui, etc. Et on donne normalement 6 semaines pour préparer la demande. Une fois reçue, il y a une date de tombée, toujours un échéancier très précis, il faut respecter l'échéancier. Une fois la demande reçue, toutes les demandes sont lues et triées avec un comité trié des employés des groupes similaires, des experts, des partenaires, des personnes des communautés. Ils et elles étudient les demandes en utilisant des critères très précis et rigoureux et la sélection finale est approuvée par notre CA, notre conseil d'administration. Alors, en total, ce processus peut prendre entre 2 et 3 mois. Juste pour votre information, dans les prochains mois, nous allons annoncer l'appel de subvention annuel, probablement au mois de décembre. Alors, si vous avez un projet à nous proposer, nous pouvons toujours recevoir votre appel pour discuter les possibilités de financement. Et si, par exemple, les subventions annuelles ne sont la bonne place pour recevoir votre demande, nous pouvons toujours vous guider à d'autres subventions.
All right, I have a hot question now coming in. We always get such great questions about where the money is going and where it's going to make the most impact. You'll find our latest impact report live online. Many of you have already seen it. The link is in the chat as well too. I want to encourage you to look through that. And those financial details, they're of great interest, as they should be. I want you, Olga, to give us an overview. First of all, the way the Canadian Women's Foundation is set up as a public foundation is very unique. Give us an overview of that, and then give us an overview of where the money came from and where it went last year. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being today with us. And Andrea, thank you for my favorite question. The Canadian Women's Foundation has a very unique operating model. We fundraise and we also grant. One of the reasons the foundation was launched over 30 years ago was because of the limited resources for funding. Organizations got those who advance gender equality. As a foundation, we were able to fill some of that funding gap, and we continue to play that role today. Because we are national in scope, we are able to provide grants in every province and territory. So we fundraise, we grant, And we also work closely with the federal government. Over the last 3 years, the foundation was able to secure significant government funding for the sector. Let's talk a little bit about the numbers. In our last fiscal year, from April 2022 to March 2023, we received 63.5 million in grants from the federal government, about 4.7 million in philanthropic support, over 800,000 were generated in investment income, and another 490,000 came from other sources of revenue. So how was this money spent? Well, we disbursed almost $60 million in grants. Another 7.5 million were spent on other charitable activities, including advocacy, capacity building. We've also spent less than 1 million on fundraising and 1 million on admin expenses. Our charitable ratio is at 96%. It is a very strong indicator, although we do not consider it to be the only one or the best indicator of the charity's efficiency. And I know many of you will agree with me here. The so-called overhead myth is a constant challenge for nonprofits, often leading to organizations that are underfunded to be unable to make an impact that aligns with their potential. We all know that nonprofits need to invest in overhead for many reasons, including the ability to attract and hire the best talent, compensate staff adequately, fund basic operating costs, and invest in innovation and technology. I invite you all to check our latest report for more information about our work in the last fiscal year. Thank you.
Thanks, Olga. Never have I been so enthusiastic about numbers, apart from talking to you. Over to Anu. Okay, this is a very good question, and we received a few about this. Wanting to know, how can we push for decision-making or action on things like ending femicide, action on missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, and action to address gender-based violence against racialized women? A lot of people have questions about safety and violence, particularly those most impacted. Can you give people a sense of what they can do to make a difference today?
Yeah, it's a really hard question. And I'd say, first of all, generally people have to get comfortable with talking about some very difficult subjects, and don't necessarily underestimate how much the more you get to know about this, the sadder or the madder you're going to get. So obviously take care of yourself, but know that it will also fuel your passion for change. The more you know, the more you want to know. And I think the more it fuels movement ahead. And I think it's important too for people to respond in the way that makes sense for them. So if you are someone who is really interested in writing emails and letters to your provincial, municipal, or federal government about femicide and how seriously you take the crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, please do that. I also advise that you send that fantastic video that those young Indigenous women that we were shown earlier on today, that you send that to your MP or you send it to your school board, wherever you know that your voice is important to be heard. Perhaps aligning yourself with a local campaign, connect yourself directly to those issues that make sense to you. So reading and taking concrete action is important. Calling on your government to declare gender-based violence a pandemic, that is something that we are working on right now, and several provincial governments, as well as the federal government, have done that. Why does it matter? Well, because it makes governments prioritize that health reality. It makes sure support gets to key organizations and key concerns. So some of the organizations that we've supported, shout out to the work that they're doing to make their work accessible and accountable to everyday Canadians. The Canadian Femicide Observatory for Justice and Accountability. It is an incredible organization that is making us count femicide in Canada, something we have never officially done before. Shout out too to the Native Women's Association of Canada in their call to search the landfills in Winnipeg. They have led the national call to action. We are hopeful that this will now happen in Manitoba. It seems like there is a change there that will lead to that, but do you want to know whether it happens or not? Keep the pressure on, keep writing to people, make sure that those calls for change are heard. If you want advice or you want to support work on workplace sexual harassment, you can reach out and find out more by looking at the work of our partners After Me Too. And later on, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the National Action Plan, which is another huge policy movement in Canada to change gender-based violence and end it for all time here.
Thank you so much, Anu. That was a big question. You really answered that so beautifully. Much appreciated. So I'm looking at the time. We don't have that much time left, but there are two important questions I want us to get to. Suzanne, I got a ton of questions ahead, and even now, a few people ask, how can I be of real help to the foundation? To be honest, I get the sense that people are passionate for change and they don't want to just do the minimum or the expected. I think that's important. We need to honor that. Can you take this one, share what we can do, and also this idea of why we pick the pillars we do, why we prioritize people at highest risk first?
Those are big questions. I'll try to answer them quickly. I think the first question about real help, see what Anu just said. I think she gave some really smart ways about how we can each take a role in pushing for gender justice in Canada. When I think about this question, I think about how each person has to assess their own power, their own influence, their own networks, and understand what they can do that's unique or helpful. So for many people, that could mean giving and making a gift to the Canadian Women's Foundation or to a local women and girls and gender diverse serving charity in their community. For other people, that means volunteering with us or in their communities. Those are things you have to know if you've got the resources, if you've got the time to do. We have had so much support on social media, and that is important. The more that we're amplifying voices that are pushing for gender justice, the more we can create that change. And that might seem like it's just, click activism, but it actually does really make a difference. It really shows that there's a groundswell of support for the kinds of inclusive and forward-thinking supports that we need in Canada. And going back to your question about our pillars, sort of what I said in my last answer, people's lives are very complicated. You can't have safety if you don't have economic security. You can't have a productive parenting experience if you don't have a good home to live in. These are very interrelated pieces. And at the Canadian Women's Foundation, we focused on a couple of key pillars, including rebuilding lives after gender-based violence, including helping young people build healthy relationships, including our girls programming that really helps girls build confidence and develop their skills, and our economic development program that funds organizations that are helping people either train for a new work, advance in their careers, or maybe launch their own businesses. But we know that that's an interrelated web. So as Anu was saying earlier, we do have these great community needs grants that have a lot of flexibility about the kinds of things that can be supported, those key areas of work, plus leadership and other pieces that are helping drive that advocacy and that systems change forward. And I would encourage folks who do have the resources to make a gift to be generous here and in their communities. For those that do have the time to really dig in and volunteer here or in their communities. And for those that really love to share the word, do that on social media, do that in your face-to-face interactions. The more we speak up, the more we use our voices, the more we amplify what's important to us, the more we will create that groundswell in that movement.
Awesome. Flash question to you, Paulette. Your leadership inspires a lot of people, and we get so many questions that just they want to build their leadership skills. People in gender justice work, people who just are excellent and care about issues of gender justice and feminism and equality. Give just a quick word of wisdom and advice to these folks. And I'll be listening as well too, please.
Thank you, Andrea. And I'm noticing the word quick. So let me see how I can crystallize some of my thoughts, because I think that's also a big question. Yeah, you know, I've had the privilege of leading a number of women's organizations. I've spent 35 years in this work, delivering the work, being frontline, as well as leadership. So I've had sort of a, you know, all around experience of being supervised and supervising and leading. And, you know, I guess there are a few things to me that come forward when I hear this question. And let me do my best to name them. I think one of them is it's important as a leader to know who you are, to be honest to yourself about who you are, and to the best of your ability, be appropriately transparent about who you are. Because I think it matters. You know, when I walk into a room, I am keenly aware of who I am and who I'm not, you know, and so who I am is someone who is a Black woman with a number of different sort of identities, and we live in a structurally stratified society. So that's really important. But you know, I've had to do a lot of work over the years to be truthful and honest about what does that mean for me as a Black woman leader in this sector, which is not the norm. And then as a result, when I am leading people, I also take the stance that understanding who I am and what my personality is, it's important for me to lead with people's strengths in mind, understanding what they bring, being clear about who they are, being thoughtful about that, being understanding of that, leading with consciousness and intentionality. And I choose those two words intentionally because as a leader, you are examined, whether you want to believe it or not, constantly. The words you say, the body language you bring into the space, the tone of your voice, you know, all of that matters in your leadership. And so you yourself have to be conscious of that to the best of your ability, and also be aware that people are modeling some aspects of that, but also you're up for criticism. So also be aware that you're up for criticism, and that's okay, because perfection is not the goal. Honesty, transparency, confidence, you know, being clear about what your strengths are not, are all part of, I think, what leadership is today, and what I aspire to in terms of teams that I lead with. And I use that word with carefully. So teams that I lead with is that I love when they are smart, even smarter than me, on things that they're hired to do. And so it's my job to really bring that out and make sure I'm listening keenly, because I think that's part of leadership, listening keenly to the people you've put in place to lead, and actually know when they're the ones that are on first base and you need to take third base. I'm sorry to bring up the whole baseball thing, even though we lost. But you know, I think it's important to understand when you're out front and when you're not, and allow that leadership to flourish. So that's also an important part of it. And I think at the end of the day, what I aim for is an inclusive kind of leadership approach, and wanting to make sure that the team that I'm leading with are themselves understanding those really key important principles of leadership with empathy, with their heart, with wisdom, with expertise, with knowledge. All of that is important, but really be thoughtful and understand who you are in that leadership journey as well.
Thanks, Paulette. Thanks for the wisdom. Skating to the end, Olga. Many of us don't know about the people behind the Canadian Women's Foundation's impact. I want you to share who they are and why we are grateful for them.
Thank you, Andrea. Of course, we are very grateful to have an amazing staff team working at the foundation. Our team has been working very hard, especially over the last 3 years at the time of flux. We would not be able to achieve this impact if they didn't facilitate it. We are thankful and mindful about supporting their well-being because we know these continue to be very challenging times. We also want to thank our board, our volunteers who gave their time because they care about gender justice.
Thanks for that, Olga. Donc, au cours de l'année, nous avons reçu des questions de la part de nos sympathisants francophones qui sont abonnés à nos communications par courriel au sujet de recevoir des courriels en français. En tant qu'organisme à but non lucratif, nous fonctionnons sous un budget limité et notre personnel travaille fort pour augmenter notre capacité pour communiquer avec vous en français. Pour le moment, nous sommes limités par les temps et les budgets dans la quantité de contenu français que nous pouvons partager avec vous, mais nous voulons que vous sachiez que notre but est de communiquer avec vous entièrement dans votre langue préférée et on travaille très, très fort en ce moment pour le réaliser. Nous vous remercions pour votre compréhension alors que nous faisons de notre mieux pour mieux vous servir. Donc, nous sommes arrivés à la fin de notre période de questions. Merci beaucoup à toutes et à tous pour vos questions et merci également à nos collègues qui se sont joints à nous avec leurs réponses perspicaces. Maintenant, je vous en prie de regarder cette vidéo sur votre impact cette dernière année.
I am Anita Amarnath. I completed my Masters in Technology in 2014 and wanted to become a college professor. But my husband's dream was to move to Canada, so I followed his dream. When I moved here, I realized it would not be easy to find a work in my field. I decided to focus on becoming a web developer and needed to upgrade my technical and communication skills. At the same time, we needed to take care of our son. Preschool is expensive and it was really hard to find a daycare spot in Vancouver. Then I started to explore my community. I found ISS of BC and approached them. They provided career advice and told me about Tech Women program, which I joined in 2018. Tech Women has 4 sections: language training, technical skill training, job readiness, and project demo. This aligned exactly with what I was looking for, and they also provided childcare support for my son, which made it so much easier to participate in the program. My son's daycare was in the same building as the Tech Women program, and as a mother, that helped me feel more relaxed. After completing the Tech Women program, I got an opportunity to join an immersive bootcamp in one of the technical schools, and I completed my diploma in web development. After completing the course, I worked as an automation test engineer, then as a WordPress developer. Currently, I am a software developer at one of the best companies. I love working as a developer and creating software that is user-friendly. I found a way to fulfill my dream in my new home in Canada.
Donc, l'histoire d'Anita n'est qu'un exemple de l'impact que vous avez eu cette année. Il y en a tellement d'autres. Les préoccupations économiques sont dans toutes nos pensées ces jours-ci, j'en suis certaine. Les enjeux économiques touchent la vie des femmes, des filles et des personnes de diverses identités de genre de manière unique et nécessitent donc des solutions uniques. Je vous présente deux de mes collègues qui parleront de ce que la Fondation canadienne des femmes fait en ce moment pour éliminer les obstacles économiques liés au genre au Canada, ce que nous on fait pour créer des possibilités économiques.
My name is Munir Abukar, and I am the manager on the Community Initiatives team who oversees our economic development grants programs. I'm here today with my fantastic colleague, Karen Campbell, who's our Senior Director of Community Initiatives and Policy, to talk to her about our work to support women and gender diverse folks and people in Canada to overcome the gender and economic barriers they face today. Hi, Karen.
Hey, Manira.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
All right, well, let's jump right into this. So, Karen, we know that women, and particularly Black, racialized, migrant, and middle-income women, took the brunt of economic losses during the pandemic emergency. How are they faring now?
Yeah, so we are certainly in an unpredictable moment economically. An uncertain pandemic recovery has not brought in the kind of stability and security that we've all been looking for. We see that wages are lagging, particularly in many women majority sectors, and price hikes on life essentials like food and housing have been followed by increases in interest rates, which we've all seen in the news and we've all been experiencing ourselves. These mounting pressures have really exacerbated existing inequalities. Women and gender diverse people, particularly those who are the most marginalized in our communities, are experiencing these pressures disproportionately.
Yeah, it's tough to hear, and especially I think you're right to the point about seeing it all over the news. What does that look like in terms of employment?
So employment figures show an economy that is still in flux. Between September of 2022 and January of 2023, we saw women's employment numbers rising by an average of 24,000 jobs per month, reaching an all-time high actually of 82% at the beginning of this year. That growth has slowed in recent months, averaging about 7,000 jobs per month between February and June. But with that said, almost 1/4 of women are still employed in part-time work. So when full-time work increases, but we see part-time jobs declining, we know that that's affecting a lot of racialized women who are losing their jobs.
Yeah, it's awful to hear. I mean, Karen, we often talk about disaggregated data. Do we know if all women having the same experience are having the same experience of instability, and essentially what barriers and pressures are these women really facing?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, not all women and gender diverse people are having the same experience, certainly not. In this moment, we're basically facing the combined pressures of costs rising and flat or declining incomes. At the end of 2022, 1/3 of women in Canada reported that they were struggling with household finances. 29% of all women in Canada reported that they were unable to cover a $500 unexpected household expense. And if you look at that across marginalized populations, that percentage is far greater. So 44% of immigrant and racialized women would not have been able to absorb that kind of extra expense. 48% of Indigenous women, 43% of women with disabilities, 42% of 2S LGBTQ plus people. So it's not the same picture for everybody, certainly.
Yeah, and I'm glad that the data paints a really colorful picture of what's happening. Through our grant making, the foundation has invested millions of dollars in economic development programs for women and gender diverse people across the country, and has worked to strengthen the capacity of organizations supporting program participants on this journey towards a sustainable livelihood. Can you tell us about some of the exciting initiatives on our team that we're currently working on this area? And I know there's quite a few.
Yeah, thanks for this question. I love talking about our work in this area because there's so much happening and it's all connected to each other, and it really is energizing and exciting to talk about. The grant making that you spoke about is really at the core of our economic development work. We're currently supporting 11 grassroots organizations across the country who are equipping women and gender diverse people with the skills that they need to break into well-paying fields where they're typically underrepresented. And they're offering wraparound supports like childcare and transportation subsidies, referrals for safe housing if they need it, referrals to mental health services if they need it, to make sure that the participants in these programs can bring their full selves to the programs and fully benefit from the programming being provided. We also know that women and gender diverse people often turn to self-employment because they encounter barriers to employment and to advancement in the workforce. And those kinds of barriers include experiences of gender-based discrimination, sexual harassment, racism, ableism, and other forms of discrimination, sometimes experienced multiply at the same time. So self-employment is sometimes really a viable alternative to trying to make your way in these multiply barriered workplaces, and also an alternative to restrictive workplaces that don't offer flexibility for things like caregiving commitments that disproportionately fall to women. We have two major projects that focus specifically on building a national feminist entrepreneurship ecosystem. The Investment Readiness Program is one of them, funded by Employment and Social Development Canada. And through that program, we support women-led and women-serving social purpose enterprises. Since 2019, we've invested $5.2 million in 90 social purpose enterprises led by women and gender diverse people. Through our Partnering for Feminist Entrepreneurship project, which is funded by the Government of Canada's Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, we're currently working with 7 community-based organizations to address the barriers that women and gender diverse entrepreneurs are facing. And we're trying to build evidence of the benefits of feminist business practices to foster communities that meet people's needs without causing harm.
Thank you for sharing all this information today with us, Karen, and giving us a really good overview of where things stand for women and for gender diverse people in the economy and the work we're doing to affect change. I think I speak for both of us when I say I'm so hopeful that we're leaving it into good hands and that we can look forward to seeing a stronger economy and more diverse economy in Canada. So thanks for sharing all that.
Thank you so much, Manira.
So it's my turn again. I'm really cognizant of the fact that ending gender-based violence like intimate partner abuse and sexual violence and emotional abuse is very important. And we won't achieve gender justice and equality if we're not safe. It's far too common, with 44% of women experiencing violence from an intimate partner in Canada, and a woman or girl killed by violence every 48 hours. And racialized women, Indigenous women, and women with disabilities, and people who are 2S LGBTQIA plus community members face very high rates of abuse. We need 2 kinds of actions today: intervention to help survivors rebuild their lives after violence, and prevention to stop the violence before it even starts. That includes culture and systems change, and every single one of us, here and beyond, we have to play our part. Before we dive into it with my colleagues, please watch this video. Seems like we might have a technical glitch. We'll get back to that video.
Led to a dramatic increase in domestic violence, with abusers constantly monitoring devices and listening in on calls.
This signal for help.
It's a campaign by the Canadian Women's Foundation.
we developed a hand signal that can be slipped into a video call.
We used this global shift in video calling and invented a new way for women facing domestic abuse that they could call for help without leaving a digital trace. You face your palm to the camera, you tuck your thumb, and you trap your thumb. It means I need help and I need you to check in with me safely.
We launched with organic posts, designed with simple instructions on how to use the signal if you need help and what to do if you see it being used. It linked to a social media toolkit that an army of over 200 women's groups instantly downloaded, customized, and shared. Then we followed up with a PSA.
I know your mom's a great baker, so should be good.
Exploding on TikTok, it became social activism on a global scale. Amplified by influential voices, the signal has made headlines in over 45 countries.
Reported by women who use the signal to seek out help.
Syrian YouTuber Saif used the hand signal on her channel, triggering her subscribers to alert the authorities. Followed by this global news story from the US.
Brooke is in police custody this morning, accused of abducting a teenager.
Authorities say a hand signal she learned from TikTok may very well have saved her life.
In Spain, police detained a man after they saw a woman use the signal during a routine traffic stop. Another man was detained after a woman used the signal in a healthcare clinic. Mobilized by a global community, the signal for help continues to be recognized as the silent call for those who need help.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you got to see that. Hello. Pamela DePinto is joining Anu and myself. Pamela is Manager of Campaigns at the Canadian Women's Foundation. I want to ask you this. Tell us about the award-winning Signal for Help as a vital tool for abuse prevention and intervention.
Hi, everyone. And yes, thank you for the question, Andrea. The Signal for Help, as you saw in the video, really provides this option for people who are in violent or abusive situations so they can reach out and get the support they need. That supports intervention efforts right there. But how do we respond and how do we offer support? The Signal for Help has really sparked these questions too. We know that in abusive situations, people are more likely to reach out to their friends or their family than they are to authorities. So that really makes us the front lines. And we need to know how to respond in a safe and non-judgmental way. This is the type of intervention that can help survivors rebuild their lives. And then when enough of us step up, we can begin to end the stigma and the silence that currently exists around gender-based violence. And we can change the story to one where everyone deserves to feel safe. Violence and abuse are never acceptable. It's in this way that we can begin to shift our culture and help prevent abuse before it even starts. And, it's very common to feel like you don't know what to do, or sometimes we can question if what we do can make a difference. But I hope it's clear based on what you've seen in the video, what I've just mentioned, that, with the Signal for Help, our individual actions really do matter, both in those one-to-one interactions that we have with the people in our lives, as well as, collectively, they can add up to create change. So if you want to get involved with the Signal for Help, we've laid out some really clear options on our website. The links have been dropped in our chat. First and foremost, you can sign up to be what's called a Signal for Help responder. We've had 59,000 people and growing already sign up to do this. You will instantly get an easy reference action guide, and it links you to other resources to help improve your learning along the way. You could sign up to take our Signal for Help Responder mini course, which really distills the basics of how to recognize and respond to abuse. Or you could also listen to our Signal for Help podcast series. This is where we interview survivors and experts who really give us a glimpse into that survivor-led support that we should all try to learn and incorporate into our lives. And you can really choose what works best for you out of these options. They're available in both English and French. And finally, our actions do extend into the workplace as well. So we have materials on how you can take action in your workplace too. This includes a workplace edition of the action guide, a workplace module in our mini course. And we also have some more tailored training options that we can offer too. Next month in particular, we'll be sharing an action every day during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence that you can take in your workplace. So be sure to watch our LinkedIn in particular, as well as visit our website where you can learn more about these and all the options I've just mentioned.
Thank you, Pam. That's a great overview. Now, Anna, we launched the Signal for Help in the first place because the 2020 pandemic made a spike of abuse happen. And this happens in crisis and emergencies. Not the first time. We've seen it before, and we're seeing it again now. We know it happens, but we're not quite prepared. We don't plan ahead. Tell us about this gender gap in emergency planning and what the foundation is doing to close that gap.
This is so important because we know in an emergency, there are many more vulnerable situations that women, young people, gender diverse people encounter. A lack of access to public space, confusing transportation and accommodation options, perhaps being evacuated to a community where you have no support and no knowledge. And this leads to being in much more dangerous situations. And that's especially more difficult for, say, a woman who's being evacuated from an emergency shelter who has already experienced a form of trauma. The emergency often re-traumatizes them. So frontline services and the people who organize them need to be aware of this and need to build in this capacity to support women and gender diverse people in a trauma-informed way into emergency readiness protocols and guidelines. So the Canadian Women's Foundation launched shock-proofing communities, focusing research, community supports, and learning on dealing with gender-based violence spikes in any emergency, including the ongoing climate crisis that we are all facing and we've seen so many examples of recently. So this means we encourage governments to incorporate, and that means government municipally, provincially, and federally. They have to incorporate gender-based analysis plus into all forms of disaster planning. They need to have a response that is immediately conscious of the hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessments aligned with gender-based violence that could possibly be needed in an emergency situation. And we're partnering with the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention to build a toolkit for municipal level emergency planners. We're also working with organizations directly to create a mini course for any frontline service-based organization to develop service continuity guidelines that they can use in an emergency. I have a little bit more to say about the National Action Plan if I have a few more minutes. Okay, so we know too that the reason why gender-based violence spiked and organizations struggled in the emergency was because they were already in a crisis. They were trying to already deal with unmanageable caseloads. And during the pandemic, they basically had to then not even pivot, but add to crisis counseling and safety planning, preparing food hampers, trying to find people's cell phones so that they could connect with them remotely, trying to make sure that they were dealing with their own stress, as well as supporting whole communities that were in crisis. So looking at a place that's already in a deficit situation, they're lacking resources, putting these people and organizations and communities into an additional stress because of the emergency means that we need a plan that will actually account for all of that complexity. And the plan that we've proposed is the National Action Plan on Gender-Based Violence, which the federal government is currently working on and has developed some levels of agreement on related to housing, related to childcare, related to infrastructure, but we still have a long way to go. We need to know more about the kinds of education and prevention programs that will be put into place. We need to know more about how we're going to train the police and the judges and the legal system to appropriately respond to gender-based violence. And we need to get to the root causes of gender-based violence, the systems that have led to inconsistencies across the country, so that we cannot always trust that women and children will be as safe in one community as they will be safe in another. This needs to be leveled out, and that's what we want the National Action Plan to do.
Pam, Anu, you make us proud. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you. Now, I'll release Pam and Anu. I'll ask Ariane to come back on the screen with me. For those of you in the Toronto area, I do want to welcome you to attend the Walrus Talks Gender-Based Violence on November the 16th. Speakers will discuss how we change a culture that doesn't have a good track record of supporting abuse survivors or even talking about abuse. Speakers include best-selling author Angela Sterritt, Jake Styka of Next Gen Men, and our own Paulette Senior. There's more to the agenda as well, and all the speakers will ask urgent questions. How do we dispel myths about violence? What stops violence? What are the roles and responsibilities of the workplace? What about the climate crisis? How do we safeguard each other in these times? I want you to join in person or online. The link to register is in the chat, and you see it on the screen there. And now over to Ariane. I'll ask you to tell us about the Feminist Creator Prize.
Thank you, Andrea. The Canadian Women's Foundation's new Feminist Creator Prize, you may have already heard of it or seen it on social media. We just recently launched it. It acknowledges, encourages, and supports diverse feminist creators who are promoting really critical conversations about and around gender justice and equality, safety, and freedom from harm. Winners are selected on an annual basis by a panel of judges who are inspiring creators themselves to receive $5,000 along with ongoing opportunities for showcase and celebration. We are so very excited to launch the prize this year with 3 wonderful judges, Sasha Exeter, Hannah Sung, and Kine Santos. Our first winners will be identified and selected by this judge panel, and then they will be announced on March 8th, 2024. Eligible creators include individuals as well as groups who are successfully developing podcasts, social media content, games, videos, educational tools, apps, images, and even more. If you would like to suggest some of your favorite creators for our judges to consider, or if you'd just like to learn more about the prize, then you can visit the link in the chat to Feminist Creator Prize. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ariane. We are so excited. And we launched this because we want to challenge that rise in gendered digital hate, harassment, and abuse. So 1 in 5 women experience some kind of online abuse and harassment in Canada. Young women, racialized women, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people face higher risks. And we know that the rising rate in hate crimes in Canada is due to increased hate in digital spaces against these groups, women, 2S LGBTQIA people, and targeted ethnic and religious groups. We're delving into this problem over coming months with experts and content creators on our podcast, All Right, Now What? Every week, we're releasing in-depth episodes interviewing some fascinating people who are doing work on this issue and have that lived experience. We're going to offer practical tips to help you in your digital life, and we'll talk about what it means to take back the tech for all of us. I want to play this clip. It's with my interview coming up with Emma and Flowly, 2 Quebec-based content creators behind the Cis Official. It's popular on social media like TikTok and Instagram, and amongst a lot of other things they speak about, they talk about equality in dating relationships. Take a look at this.
So healthy romantic relationship content seems to trigger special backlash on your channels. So, related to that, we often speak to online behavior that's harmful in platforms like Instagram and Facebook. But I'm curious about the gendered abuse and harassment in dating apps.
The dating apps, they're all about, yes, of course, helping you find your match, but also making money, right? So their priority is not to make it a safe space necessarily. Yes, there is, for example, Bumble, which is, I think that the woman has to be the one writing first, but still, I mean, it's one step, but it's not necessarily creating really these safe spaces, because once you're in contact with the other person, then it's just in. Someone can just be harassing, and then they're reported, their account is taken down, boom, the next day they create a new account like nothing happened. There's no like follow up like concretely to really erase these abusers and perpetrators from these sites. It's so easy to just see people as products because we're just swiping through people. So there is also this sense of, I'm not really talking to a real human being. So hate and violence can be perpetrated so much more easily. They're just a picture, they're just there, I can write anything and then unmatch them.
And the way we can make a link between dating apps and, digital hate is that, what happens when women and girls say no? Their boundaries oftentimes are just not respected. What happens when they say no, whether that is when they are engaging with their partners and say no to have sex, or whether that is they do not want to go on a date with this person. And unfortunately, even though they block or they say no, well, they will still find them on Facebook, or they will still, text message them. Just a reminder that unfortunately, there is still so much work to be done to protect and to enhance women's safety.
So, healthy romantic.
Thanks so much. Now, listen to All Right Now What, wherever you get your podcast content. Learn more about our English and French podcasts on our website. The link is in the chat. Now, we're at our end. We have some opportunities to win prizes. One of two $50 gift cards from our generous partner, Giant Tiger. For many years, Giant Tiger has supported programs for girls and non-binary people across Canada by supporting our Girls Fund. Literally thousands have benefited from their steadfast support. And we also have a gift card, $50 from Lily Lou Aromas, another generous partner. Founded by Lily, a passionate 10-year-old mini entrepreneur, they offer a range of hand-poured soy wax candles in lots of different scents. The candles are crafted with love and bring joy and tranquility to everyday moments. To be entered into the draw, I want you to fill out our feedback survey. You see it in the chat, you see it on screen. We want to know how we did today and what you would like to learn more about. We take this feedback seriously and we do respond to it. It does not go into a void, and we appreciate it deeply. Over to you, Ariane.
Moving forward, there are so many ways to take action and to stay close with the Canadian Women's Foundation. You can join the Rosemary Brown Giving Collective, which Suzanne told us about earlier. You can become a Signal for Help responder, as Pam described. Listen to our All Right Now What podcast. Join our email list. Follow us on social media. There is something for everyone. You can check out our website. The link is in the chat. There is really no Canadian Women's Foundation without all of you. You play a critical role, and you're needed now more than ever to build the vision we need. One where every woman, girl, gender diverse person has the power, safety, support, and rights to thrive, both today and tomorrow. Maintenant que nous sommes arrivés à la fin de notre assemblée, merci beaucoup de vous être jointe à nous aujourd'hui. Merci pour vos questions et vos commentaires si bien réfléchis. Nous sommes reconnaissants de votre engagement envers la justice de genre. Thank you to all of you who were able to join us today for your participation and for your thoughtful questions. We are so grateful for you and your commitment to gender justice. J'aimerais aussi reconnaître et remercier tout le monde qui a aidé à réaliser cet événement. Now for a big virtual round of applause to say thank you to our staff and supporters who made today possible. It takes so much to bring these events to life on the front end and the back end. There is so much going on behind the scenes to make this happen. So thank you to our wonderful speakers and hosts, our language interpreters, captioners, our ASL and LSQ interpreters, and of course, our talented tech team. You all made this possible. You made it safe, you made it accessible, and you brought us all together. It really is an art and it isn't always easy. So thank you for your hard work. We deeply appreciate you and all that you do for the Canadian Women's Foundation. One last reminder, n'oubliez pas de remplir le sondage pour avoir la chance de gagner un des 2 prix mentionnés par Andrea. Please don't forget to fill out the survey for a chance to win one of the 2 prizes Andrea mentioned. We will also send you a follow-up email with the link to the survey should you need it. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Merci beaucoup et bonne journée.